Good morning. Yes, my eyes look a little sleepy because I am. But I know what the problems are, and the good news is they can be resolved. So hopefully here within the next couple weeks, I'll be back to my normal sleep regimen. Cross your fingers. Let's hope. But anyway, on my last video, I said that in my next video, which is this one, I was going to tell you about my brother. So here we go. I'm going to tell you about my brother. What a better day to talk to you about it, because I have therapy today and I have to leave here in about an hour, so perfect timing. So yes, I grew up with one sibling, my brother. His name is Eric. He was about a year and a half older than me, so we were really close growing up. You know, it was always Eric and Julie. And our parents, we pretty much had a normal childhood with, no family's perfect. But things seemed to be fine, for the most part. But once I hit about 5, 6, 7 years old, we still had a pretty good childhood. We'd go down to our grandparents' house. They lived right on the lake, and we'd spend a lot of our time in the summers there. And we were very close to our grandparents. So, the majority of my childhood memories, the best ones, have to do with being with my grandparents and my brother and my cousins, my mom's siblings, kids, because my dad was an only child. So pretty decent, good childhood memories. Things started falling apart though when we were in high school. My parents got divorced or separated, and it just got really yucky from there. Everything in my life just kind of snowballed, trauma after trauma from there. I still remember the day getting home from school, and my mom, she was waiting for my brother and I to get through the door, and she stood there and she just was so matter of fact. She was like, this is what's going on. I'm leaving Dad, and I'm going to be staying down at the lake. And my brother swears by it. I don't remember, and maybe I just blocked it out because I was in such shock and I was so sad. But my mom wanted to know, like, right then and there, who we were going to live with. And I don't remember that, but apparently that's what she was kind of pressuring us to do right then and there. But see, my mom, where she was going to be living down at the lake, it was way far away from our school. So I remember I ended up having to just stay in our home with my dad, and that's another story. He ended up never home. He was out with he wasn't an alcoholic. He was really into hockey and really into, like, being up at the Armory, the ice rink, the Coliseum is what they call it. I mean, you have to understand, this is in Michigan. This is in Upper Michigan, so everything up there is like hockey, anything having to do with snow, in the winter time. And then summertime, you got your football and your normal stuff. But in the wintertime, where I'm from, hockey is huge. So my dad, he would coach hockey. He would even drive the Zamboni sometimes to, clean the ice. And he actually worked at the Coliseum also in the office area and did all that kind of stuff. But after him and my mom separated, he rarely was home. And then he met some lady that he's actually married to now. And that's a whole other ball of worms. But anyway, kettle of fish, ball of worms, can of worms, whatever the sayings may be, you know what I mean. So yeah, my parents separated, and since my brother was a year and a half older than me, he was already out of high school. He had just graduated. So he was about to start a job on a place called Isle Royal. My mom actually drew this. Isle Royal. If you look on the map of Michigan, look at the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. So you have your mitten like this, right? And then you have the top of Michigan like this. We lived up here, right on Lake Superior. But if you look in Lake Superior towards the top of Michigan, you'll see a tiny little island called Isle Royal. Anyway, that's where my brother was going to be working that summer. So, and that's where he was going to, start his life, because he loved being outdoors. And I think his goal was to, like, either go into forestry or just do something with nature. And so I was pretty much on my own, to be honest with you. But anyway, he loved being outdoors. He ended up eventually moving out west. He went to Montana. He lived in Wyoming. He was ski patrol in Jackson, Wyoming, at the Tetons. And he was just, or not the I don't know what ski hill it was, but I went out to visit him actually for a Christmas when I was 17, maybe just turned 18, or right before I turned 18. I spent a Christmas with him out in Jackson, Wyoming. He worked at a lodge out there, and all the employees had their own cabin. It was kind of like the Dirty Dancing type scenario, except it was in the winter. Not as far as the way people acted, but as far as like the cabins and then the main area. So it was really cool to see that, especially being so young. And I thought my brother was always cool. Like, I always thought my brother was the coolest person on earth. He would get so mad when I would steal like his t-shirts and stuff, because I wanted to like wear his clothes even. And I'd try to steal his jackets and stuff, because he was a really good dresser. He loved wearing nice clothes. He always made sure he looked good. Always had his hair nice, and he was more preppy. But anyway, so yeah, he was living his life. And I would say he also spent some time out in Washington State too. He lived in Seattle for a while. He was dating a girl out there, and they were going to get married, but then they ended up calling it off, and he moved away and went back to, I think, Wyoming or something. Anyway, I'm getting the timeline wrong, but you're getting the idea. Like, he kind of jumped all around, just trying to find where he belonged, because he knew what he wanted to do. So he was kind of testing the waters in different parts of the country. So he ended up meeting or reconnecting with this girl that we went to high school with. She was a little bit older than he was. But he always had a crush on her in school. Well, they reconnected on social media, and they ended up, long story short, getting together, and eventually they got married. And so I think my brother's wedding was in 2002, maybe? No, wait, what am I talking about? No, it would have been in 2019. 2020, somewhere around there. It was around COVID time. It was right before COVID. And so there he was, married. She had 2 boys, so he was a stepdad, and things were looking good. He did change a little bit, because she was a little bit different as far as her beliefs and things like that. So he kind of changed along with her a little bit. We kind of lost our Eric. We lost our true Eric there for a while, especially when it comes to certain things having to do with, like, I don't want to say politics, but in that area, okay? Kind of like how you view how things should be run and your beliefs and things like that. So he changed a little bit, but it's understandable. I mean, that's his wife, and obviously he wants to respect her. And so anyway, that's how things were going. And every Saturday, sometimes when I worked on a Saturday, or even if I didn't work on a Saturday, every Saturday, my brother, myself, and his wife, we would all get on speakerphone and talk to each other for a few hours and just laugh and connect and catch up. And it was great. I felt like I had like a little family, because the lady that my dad married, she didn't want anything to do with my brother and I. And my dad allowed this behavior from her, and it's still like that to this day. So it was almost like me being a part of Eric and his wife. It was almost like it was okay, because I had my own little family on the side. I didn't really let what happened with my dad and that whole situation get to me too much. So it was nice. But then there was one week back in 2022, it was in March. I was working 4 10-hour days, and I was exhausted. This job just completely exhausted me. And but I noticed that during that week, my brother, he kept texting me, and he would call me, and I would respond to him and write him back and be like, hey, I'm busy with work. Can I call you later? Or, I'm sorry, I can't bring my phone into where I'm working, because I worked in this place where the room it had to be sterile, so we couldn't bring our cell phones in there. And finally I just told him, I said, let's just wait till Saturday when we do our usual speakerphone conversation. And he's like, okay, that's fine. I just wanted to connect. And I thought, that's kind of strange that maybe he's going through something right now. Like, maybe he's fighting with his wife, or, maybe he just, because it was unusual for him to do that, during that week. Because he knew I was very busy with work, and he knew that my hours caused me to not really be able to talk that much during the week, because my shifts were from like 5 in the morning until 3:30 in the afternoon. And by the time I got home at 3:30 in the afternoon, all I had time to do was sit down, maybe have a cup of coffee, have my dinner, take my shower, go to bed, because I'd have to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning, and do it all over again. So during my 4-day work week, I was really kind of unavailable to have any type of phone conversation. And he knew this. And so that's why I was kind of like, this is really unusual, but I'll find out on Saturday, like, what's going on, I'm sure. So I wasn't really that concerned. So Saturday comes around, and I get home from work. It was probably around 2 o'clock. And I noticed I missed a call from my dad. And I thought, that's weird. Dad never calls me. I'll just call him real quick, see what he needed, and then I'll call Eric, because I'll be on the phone with them longer. So I called my dad, and I was like, hey, what's up? And my dad's like, where were you earlier? And I said, well, I worked today, because we would work sometimes on Saturdays too, if we were behind. And he's like, oh, okay. And I said, so what's up? He's like, well, and then he kind of went silent, and he goes, and then all of a sudden he goes, well, kiddo, I've got some bad news. And I was on the phone, and I'm like, bad news. And my mind immediately went to like maybe my dad's wife, because she has a lot of like health problems too. I don't know exactly what they are. I know, I didn't know, but that's the first thing my mind went to. I thought maybe something happened to his wife. And he didn't say anything. And I was like, well, what's going on? Like, what do you mean you have bad news? And he goes, it's about your brother. And then my mind immediately went to, he got into an accident, a car accident or something. Or maybe he hurt himself out in the outdoors or something, or maybe he even like got in a drunk driving accident and got injured. Those were the things that were coming to my head. And I said, okay. I said, well, is he okay? And my dad didn't say anything. He stayed silent. And I said, is he dead? And my dad, I don't even remember how he responded, but it was apparent. It was obvious that yes, my brother was no longer with us. And I remember I threw my phone down onto the carpeting in my living room, and I screamed out for my husband, and I told him, what was going on. I honestly, it was such a blur. I remember screaming for my husband, telling him that my brother was no longer here. And so my husband went and grabbed my phone off the floor and picked it up and talked to my dad and talked to him for a little bit. And then I'm sitting there, and I'm just like trying to really just grasp what I was just told. And I finally said, wait a minute, I need to know how he passed. What's going on? Like, how did he pass? So I grabbed the phone out of my husband's hand, and I got back on the phone with my dad, and I was really upset. And this is something that really irritated me. My dad's like, you need to calm down, because if you don't calm down, I'm not going to be able to talk to you right now. And I'm just here in my mind thinking, you literally just told me some horrible, devastating, traumatic news, and you're telling me to calm down. Like, but that's my dad for you. He's very stoic. And so I was like, okay, but I want to know what happened. And then he told me what happened. He said my brother and his wife, they got into an argument the night prior. They were both drinking heavily. They got into an argument over, I found out later on, it was over just finances and, your common typical reasons why married couples fight. But it was also fighting over the fact that my brother was struggling with his alcohol addiction. As she's drinking with him, okay. Don't get me started on that. And so they got into a fight, and he threatened to do something to himself, and he said he was going to walk out the door. And trust me, it was nighttime in the winter. We're talking March in the UP of Michigan, so it was cold, dark, nighttime. And she was like, in her intoxicated state, she just said, fine, go, do whatever you want to do. If that's what you're going to do, then do it, So he left. He left the house in his pajamas and his slippers. I found out later on that he had taken a shower before he left, which I thought was odd at the time, before I knew the whole story. He went in, took a shower, left his phone in the laundry basket, but he left in his slippers and pajamas, freshly showered, got into their vehicle and took off. And his wife, she didn't call anybody. She didn't call the law. She didn't call my dad. She didn't call me. Even though I was across the country down in Florida, she still didn't bother to call anybody to let them know what was going on. So what she was doing between the time he left the house, probably around 8:30, 9 o'clock that night, all throughout the night, whatever she was doing, I don't know how you could actually go to sleep knowing what was going on with your husband, and not knowing where he went, but knowing what he said right before he left and not doing anything about it. I have no idea. It's always going to remain a mystery. That's between her and the Lord. But she ended up calling the law in the morning. And so the police came out and they started their investigation, because at first it was a missing persons thing. And so they started on foot looking for my brother. They started from the house and they kind of worked their way out. Well, they found the vehicle down the street parked in a neighbor's driveway. But then, because it was wintertime and it had snowed, or it had not snowed, they found his footprints from the vehicle, but they walked back to the house. But he wasn't in the house. So it was kind of like, what's going on here? His footprints led him to the detached shed that they had. It was too small to be a garage. That's where they kept their lawn care things, their rakes, their wheelbarrows, Christmas decorations. It was kind of like a storage shed, if you will. But I guess if you wanted to park something in it, you could do like a tiny little car or a golf cart. But that was pretty much as big as it was. And so the officer opened the door and found him. And that's how he left us. And I'm still not okay. I still feel so sad and so guilty that I did not answer that phone during that week, because I feel like if I had answered the phone, maybe he would have talked to me about what was going on with him, and maybe just him talking to his sister, because we lost my mom. My mom passed away in 96. So we didn't really have our mom, and we definitely didn't really have our dad because he was busy with a different family. So it was really just Eric and me, Eric and I. And as far as family. We had each other, and we always would say that too, like, thank goodness we have each other, and we're gonna be okay because we have each other, you know. And I thought maybe if I would have answered the phone, he would have talked to me about what was going on, all this pain that he was feeling, and maybe I could have made a difference. But it didn't work out that way. I didn't answer the phone. But I can't live with that guilt. It doesn't eat me up like it used to, but it still comes to my mind when I think about it. It's still so surreal, and it's been 4 years. March 11th of 2022 was the day on his obituary. So, to be honest, I don't know if it was the 10th or the 11th, because nobody knows when it happened, but they based it off of when he was found. And it could have been to the medical examiner just determining based off of the condition of his body when he actually passed. So yeah, March 11th is the day that is on his obituary. And then March 21st would have been his 45th birthday. So that was rough. So I was in Michigan, so immediately got my stuff together, and we drove up to Michigan. I'm sorry, I was in Florida. Drove up to Michigan a couple days after finding out the news, because obviously we had to be there. I wanted to be there for his funeral and stuff, and seeing him laying there in his casket was just, it did not seem real. It felt like a cruel joke. It was, because my brother was a jokester, and I just kept thinking into my side of my brain somewhere, like, what if he opened his eye and said, gotcha, you know? But he didn't. He's not with us anymore. And that's the thing about these kinds of passings. They say, if you know someone who's struggling, be there for them. And that's true. You always never want to turn your back on somebody who's struggling. And it doesn't matter how many times they struggle. You know, especially like if it comes to addiction or something, you know, and people, I've heard stories of people just having to give up on other people who have addiction issues because nothing is seeming to work, and it's almost like you're on your own now. I've heard stories like that, and I get it. I understand. It is frustrating when the person just can't seem to break free from their demons. But I'm here to tell you, don't ever stop trying to help. I know how exhausting it is. I know how frustrating it is, but you never, ever, ever want to make them feel like you're not going to be there for them anymore. I didn't do that to my brother. I'm just saying there's other stories I've heard of other families that have gone through this, where I've read that the person who passed just struggled and didn't get enough help, or didn't have somebody really there for them, truly. So yeah, it's been 4 years, and he was cremated, and we spread his ashes on a mountain in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, because, you know, he loved being outside, and so we sprinkled some of his ashes too in Lake Superior. And so that's the story about my brother. I lost my brother 4 years ago, and I'm not even near the point where I can discuss it without that rock forming in my throat. But you know, I'll tell you something. The one emotion I have never felt was anger towards him. I can't be mad at him for what he did. How can you be mad at somebody when they're having and feeling so much pain inside. So much pain that they think that that's the only answer. How can you be mad at somebody for that? If we're mad at people for doing that to themselves, that's just us being selfish. It's because we want them here. It's because of the way we feel. Well, how about the way they feel? How about the way they felt to bring them to that point? So I never got to say goodbye to my brother, and I had to see him laying there in the casket with his preppy clothes on and his cowboy boots, leaning against the casket, and a sign that said, "The mountains are calling, I must go." I have that sign. I'm going to put it up when we get into a house. Instead of this travel trailer, there's no room to put it on the wall anywhere. I miss him. I miss him a lot. And I'll tell you a little bit more of this story, and then I'm going to go. When my brother passed away, I still wasn't really touched by the Lord yet. I was a believer, but I definitely was not following Jesus. I was still doing my own thing. And in my ignorance, I truly believed that our loved ones are here with us in spirit, and they're wandering around watching us. I believed that. And so I decided that I am going to start buying books and studying up and learn how to become a medium, because I want to talk to my brother. I desperately needed to talk to my brother. And I thought maybe if I get really good at this little art skill, which is actually witchcraft, I can see him. And I was all into this. I was dead set on it. Nobody even told me, don't do that. Nobody said anything to me. So it's not like I had anyone telling me the truth. And I didn't get very far into my studies. And then, because the Lord touched my heart. The Lord rescued me from that path of witchcraft. In my ignorance, I did not know that our loved ones are not here roaming around the earth. The only spirits roaming around the earth are unclean spirits and demons. Our loved ones are resting in the presence of the Lord. If you're out of body, you're present with the Lord. So I had to come outside because my husband got home and I wasn't done with my story yet. So yeah, the Lord rescued me from that. I did not know that what I was doing was witchcraft. And when I started reading my Bible, especially in Jude, the book of Jude, I started to realize, oh my gosh, I was doing something really bad. No, I can't connect with my brother. No, I can't practice this witchcraft. I had no idea that what I was doing was so dangerous and so wrong. And it clearly says it right there in the Bible that witchcraft is you're worshiping Satan. And I did not know that, but the Lord rescued me from that. That's the good part. And ever since that day, I've done nothing but think about Jesus. And Matthew, I read Matthew and just read every red word in the Bible, because I hang on to Jesus' every word. I want to know all there is to know about Jesus, and I love that man so much for what he did for us and how he's just such a good God. The one thing I do struggle with, though, is I don't know where my brother's heart was at the time of his passing. I don't know. We grew up in the Lutheran church, but I don't know if my brother had a relationship with the Lord. I don't know that. And that's one thing I struggle with. I don't know where his heart was when he took his last breath. I don't know if he accepted Jesus Christ as his Lord and Savior. I don't know. We didn't talk about that stuff. So that's one thing I talk to God a lot about. And I know that once they're passed away, prayer doesn't really people say that, and maybe the Bible does too, I don't know. But in my heart, I still want to pray for my brother. I talk to Jesus. Jesus is our advocate, okay? And the actual judgment day is not here yet. And I do tell Jesus that. I'm like, listen, I still want to pray for Eric. Wherever he is, please forgive him for what he's done. Please forgive his sins. You know, as his sister, I'm just so crushed over what he did, and I talk to the Lord about it all the time, and I still pray for him, even though it may not have any effect on their eternity, but I just feel in my heart that's what I want to do, so I do it. I still pray for him. I don't talk to him because he's not down here, and Satan's a chameleon, and these mediums, they claim they're talking to your loved ones, or our loved ones. They're not. They're talking to demons pretending to be our loved ones. They can shapeshift into anyone they want. They're demons. And that's why people buy into this, like mediumship and psychics and stuff, you know? It's so false. It is so false, and it's witchcraft. And it is absolutely a no-no. So don't buy into that. Our loved ones are resting, okay? We say rest in peace, but then these mediums, they go and stir them all up. But it's not them, like I said. But yeah, they're resting right now. They're resting in the Lord's presence until the day of the Lord's return, when we're all caught up in the clouds and all of that wonderful stuff. I mean, read your Bibles, read Revelation, read the whole New Testament, read the whole Bible. But, you know, the New Testament is when Jesus comes, and so it's a good place to start. So that was the story about my brother. Thank you for listening. Always be kind, because you never know what people are going through, and sometimes there are no signs. That's the thing. So that's why you always must be kind. And if somebody's reaching out to you for help, always make a point to help them, no matter how many times. And you know what? We're called to forgive all the time. Forgive. Jesus forgave us. We must forgive others and help others and love one another as Christ loves us. And with that being said, I'm going to end the video now because I have to go to therapy. What a time to go to therapy. So I love you all. God bless. I'll see you on the next video.